No woman had challenged the Alpha King in 300 years. Not until Daya Ren stepped into the circle for her imprisoned father, and the whole court waited for her death. But before Kael Morrow could pass judgment, something impossible happened. Now the king must choose between the law that protects his throne and the woman who walked in ready to destroy him. Chapter 1. The Circle. Pack law says any wolf can challenge the alpha for leadership, but in 300 years, no female has ever tried, and I'm standing in the challenge circle knowing that if I lose, I don't go home. I go to a cell beside my father's, or I don't go anywhere at all. The stone is cold under my bare feet. That's the first thing. The cold, traveling up through my soles and settling in my knees, my spine, the back of my teeth. The imperial court has assembled in a ring around me, 300 wolves in a formal court dress, and not one of them is breathing loud enough for me to hear. That's how quiet it is. That's how wrong this is, to them. I keep my chin level, my hands loose at my sides. The dais is 20 feet ahead of me. Kael Morrow stands at its edge, and I understand now, in a way I didn't from the reports and the whispered accounts and the second-hand descriptions I spent 5 years collecting. I understand now why no one challenges him. It isn't the width of his shoulders or the way he holds himself, though both are considerable. It's the weight of him, the presence, the specific quality of stillness that belongs to something at the top of a very long food chain. 5 years ago, my father knelt in this same dirt. The memory comes in on a smell, cedar smoke and cold iron, and I let it pass through me the way my father taught me to process pain, acknowledge, file, continue. They stripped his rank and dragged him to a cell. I was 19. I watched from the gallery above. I did not make a sound. I have been making sound ever since, in every way except the one that mattered. Until today, I breathe once, slowly. The court murmurs, low, restless, and I feel the weight of 300 pairs of eyes like a physical pressure against my skin. I have been looked at with contempt before, with pity. This is something new. The particular attention of people watching someone break the shape of their world, not knowing yet whether to be outraged or riveted. Let them look. Kael Morrow has not moved. His eyes are on me, dark, unreadable, patient in the way that predators are patient. And I meet them directly, which I understand is its own kind of transgression here. I open my mouth. The court goes silent in a new way, a held breath way. I invoke the ancient challenge right. My voice carries. I trained it to. Under pack law, any wolf of blood and rank may stand in this circle and demand judgment. I am Daya Ren, daughter of Alpha Ren of the Ashen Pack. I am standing. A combat challenge would have ended here in blood or submission, but a formal grievance invocation is older than combat rights. It cannot be answered with teeth. Pack law requires it be answered with process. I am counting on that distinction with my life. Something moves across Kael Morrow's face. It's there and gone in less than a second, but I've spent 5 years learning to read people who don't want to be read. His eyes narrow, just slightly, not with anger. With attention. The air changes. It starts at the edges of the circle, a shimmer, like heat off summer stone, except the day is cold. The pack magic rises from the ground in a slow pulse, answering the invocation the way it's answered every challenge for 3 centuries, without preference, without mercy, without any interest in the politics of the people inside it. The circle activates, the boundary seals. Whatever happens next, happens here, in front of everyone. Kael descends the dais steps, 1, 2, 3. He moves the way he holds himself, unhurried, like the outcome is already decided, and he's simply waiting for the world to catch up to what he knows. I take my first step toward him, and the mate bond hits us both like the world ending. It's not a feeling, it's a fact, sudden and total and impossible to argue with, a recognition at the cellular level that bypasses every defense I've built in 5 years. Distance is the only thing that makes it bearable. I understand that instinctively, the way you understand heat from a flame before you've been burned. I feel it slam into my chest, and I see it happen to him at the same moment. His hand comes up halfway, stops. His whole body goes still. The court gasps. All of them at once, a single sound. For 3 seconds, no one breathes. His eyes find mine across the distance between us. I look back at him, and I do not move, and I do not let my face change, and my heart is a drum behind my ribs that I will not let anyone hear. I have practiced this moment for 5 years. I will not waste it. Chapter 2. The Bond. The mate bond feels like being struck by lightning and drowned at the same time, and I have 30 seconds before this man decides whether I live or die. I know what it is. Every wolf has heard it described. The way you hear about avalanches or eclipses, phenomena so rare they exist mostly as stories. A true mate bond. The kind that hasn't touched an alpha king in 4 generations. The kind that doesn't ask permission and has chosen, with spectacular indifference to my plans, to announce itself in front of 300 witnesses while I'm standing in a challenge circle trying not to get killed. Kael Morrow's hand is still frozen halfway to his chest. His eyes are still on mine. I move first. It costs me something. Pulling against the bond is like walking into a current, like convincing your body to do the opposite of what every instinct is screaming. But I have spent 5 years overriding my instincts, and I am very good at it. I take one step, then another. My spine stays straight. My chin stays level. I invoke formal grievance under the ancient rite. The court erupts, not in the held breath way of before, in sound, actual sound, 300 voices breaking loose at once. I catch fragments. Female challenger, true mate, the Alpha King, 4 generations, and underneath it all, one phrase repeated in several registers of disbelief. A true mate. He has a true mate. Kael's hand drops. He straightens, and whatever the bond cost him in that moment is gone from his face entirely. He is composed and still and watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes, and I cannot tell if he is furious or calculating or something else entirely. He doesn't acknowledge the bond, neither do I. Good. We understand each other on that much. I raise my voice over the noise. Pack law gives me this. A challenger invoking formal grievance cannot be silenced, cannot be removed, cannot be overruled by any authority short of the Alpha himself. I have read the law 6 times. I know exactly where I stand. 5 years ago, I say, and the steadiness of my voice seems to surprise them into listening. Your empire annexed the Ashen Pack. My father, Alpha Ren, was stripped of rank and imprisoned on charges of treason and forgery. I pause. Let it land. Those charges are lies. The annexation was illegal. The eruption this time is louder. Lords on their feet. Someone calling for my removal, citing 3 procedural codes in rapid succession. 2 others shouting him down. Kael raises one hand, that's all. The silence is immediate and total, the kind that has nothing to do with courtesy and everything to do with what it means to be at the top of a very long food chain. 300 wolves. Not one sound. He looks at me for a long moment. Ward status, he says finally, measured, carrying the same easy authority as his silences. You will be housed and protected until your grievance is resolved. You have 30 days. I prepared for denial, for procedural challenge, for anger, not for this, the quiet, unhesitating grant of protection, delivered as simply as a fact about weather. Thank you, Your Majesty. Nothing in his expression changes, but his eyes stay on mine 1 beat longer than necessary before he turns away, and I file that with everything else I don't know what to do with yet. As the court guard moves to escort me out, I scan the assembled faces, lords, council members, attendants. Then I find Heron. He's positioned near the far wall, perfectly still. His face is controlled in the particular way of someone who has spent decades perfecting it, neither surprised nor angry nor pleased, just calculating. I know that look. I have seen it in smaller rooms on smaller men, always right before something bad happens to someone who didn't see it coming. That's my real enemy. Not the Alpha King at the dais, not the bond still humming beneath my sternum like a second heartbeat I didn't ask for. Heron holds a seat on the Grievance Review Council. I found that in imperial records 2 years ago, cross-referenced it against every procedural block my father's case ever hit. Every closed door, every denied request for the past 11 years has his fingerprints on it somewhere. I just don't yet know the shape of what he's protecting. Him. I walk out of the circle with my spine straight. I do not look back. That night, alone in the ward chambers, polished wood, clean linen, a fire I didn't have to build, I sit on the edge of the bed and shake. 60 seconds. I allow exactly that, the tremor in my hands, the delayed crash of adrenaline, the specific terror of doing the thing and finding it nothing like rehearsal. 60 seconds. Then I stop. My father is still in that cell. He doesn't know I'm here. He doesn't know I have 30 days. I breathe out slowly, open my bag, pull out the documents I've memorized well enough to recite in my sleep. Somewhere in this palace, in his private chambers, Kael Morrow is thinking about what happened in that circle. So am I. Chapter 3, The 30 Days. I have 30 days to prove my father's innocence, and the only man who can help me is the one I came here to destroy. I wake on the first morning thinking about the clock. The ward chambers are warm in a way I haven't been in a long time. Real warmth, from a fire tended by someone whose job it is to tend fires, not by me in a cold room with damp wood. The ceiling is painted with wolves and stars and old pack symbols. The bed is softer than anything I've slept on in 5 years. It all feels like a trap. Comfortable captivity is still captivity, and I have 29 days left before this cage's door closes permanently. I'm dressed and at the window before the servant arrives with breakfast and a stack of documents I didn't know I needed. Court protocol, ward obligations, the formal grievance review process laid out in 8 dense pages of official language designed, I am immediately certain, to be as difficult to navigate as possible. I read every word twice while the food goes cold. Byzantine by design. You don't build an empire by making it easy to challenge you. I map the timeline in the margins. Within 10 days, I must register my evidence categories with the Review Council. Not the evidence itself, just declare what kind I intend to produce. Within 20, proof of provenance for any documents I plan to submit. Day 30, the grievance expires. The deed is at the Ashen Ruins. 2 days travel, minimum. I need access to imperial records to establish a legal baseline. I need the Review Council not to block me at every procedural turn. I need Kael Morrow to want the truth. That last item is the problem I have no solution to yet. The first court appearance happens mid-morning, a formal introduction, uncomfortable by design. A herald reads my name into the record. I'm escorted into a reception room where 40 people watch me with the attention of those who've already decided what they think. I make the circuit, polite, unrevealing. I catalog faces. Who is hostile, who is neutral, who can't quite look at me directly. A lord near the window keeps glancing at where the mate bond would show if it were marked. A woman in council gray studies me like a problem she's been assigned to solve. Then Heron materializes at my elbow with the smoothness of someone who has spent decades learning to move through rooms without appearing to. Ward Daya, warm voice, cold eyes. Such a brave thing you've done. I do hope you have evidence sufficient to support such serious claims. A pause, timed precisely. It would be a shame for grief to be mistaken for fact. 3 layers of silk, every word deniable. I have what I need, I say. Which is almost true. He smiles. I'm certain you believe that. He inclines his head and drifts away. I watch him go and do the math. Heron sits on the Grievance Review Council. Heron controls access to the Imperial Record Archives. He has held that position for 11 years, the entire length of my father's imprisonment. Which means every file, every access request, every procedural decision has passed through his hands. None of it was accidental. The silk is the tell. A man with nothing to hide doesn't threaten this carefully. I finish the circuit. Accept tea I don't drink. Smile at people whose names I commit to memory. And I understand, with a clarity that settles in my chest like cold water, that I am alone in this court in every way that matters. The grievance process is controlled by the man whose crime I'm exposing. The records I need are behind doors he holds the keys to. The only authority in this empire who can override him is Kael Morrow, the mate I cannot trust. The man whose hands weren't entirely steady yesterday when he thought no one was watching. I set down my tea and sit with that, the fear that the bond will cloud my judgment before my father runs out of time. The knock comes that evening. 3 hours at my writing desk, the same problem turning over like a stone with no bottom. I open the door. Kael Morrow stands in the corridor, alone. No guards, nothing marking his rank except the rank itself, which he carries without effort. Dark, unreadable eyes. Walk with me. Not a question, not quite an order. I think through every reason to refuse and land on the one that overrides all of them. I cannot solve this from inside this room. I step into the corridor. All right, I say. Walk. Chapter 4, the Ceremonial Hall. He doesn't ask about my evidence or my grievance. He asks me to tell him about the Ashen Pack. The palace gardens are empty at this hour, which I suspect is not accidental. Kael moves through them as if he is aware of every exit. I match his pace and keep 2 feet of distance between us, enough to reduce the bond to a low hum rather than the insistent pull it becomes when we're closer. We walk a full minute before he speaks. What was it like? He asks, before the annexation. It's not the question I prepared for. I have answers ready for interrogation, for pressure, for every version of this conversation that involves him trying to dismantle what I'm doing here. I don't have anything for what was it like. Why does that matter? I ask, which is not the same as answering. Indulge me. I look at the path ahead. The night is cold and clear, the grounds smell of turned earth and something evergreen, and I stand in the gap between not answering and answering, deciding. Then, against my better judgment, I answer. It was loud, I say. People assume pack life would be peaceful. All that space. It wasn't. It was loud and warm, and someone was always in someone else's kitchen. My father's ceremonial hall smelled like pine smoke and roasted meat on feast nights, and my mother's honey cakes that she only made 3 times a year. I stop. I hadn't meant to say that much. Kael doesn't fill the silence. He just walks and listens, and the quality of his attention is unsettling. I'm used to people waiting for their turn to speak. This is different. He's actually hearing it, which makes it more dangerous, not less. Your first shift, he says. Where were you? I answer before I can stop myself. The eastern courtyard, 16, late. Most wolves shift younger. A breath. My father was there. He didn't make it a lesson or a ceremony. He just sat with me afterward, on the ground, until I stopped shaking. Didn't say anything useful. Just stayed. That sounds useful to me. It was. The most useful thing anyone has ever done for me. I catch myself. I have been talking for 3 minutes with almost no deflection, 3 minutes longer than I intended. What did you shift into? Kael asks. A wolf, I say, which is technically an answer. He gives me a look that is, startlingly, almost amused. Naturally. I meant gray, white patch behind the left ear that my mother said looked like a thumbprint. I say it before the instinct to withhold catches up with me, and then I hear him laugh. It's quiet, unguarded. The sound of someone surprised into it rather than performing it. Brief, barely a moment, but long enough. I've heard Kael Morrow's actual laugh, and I can tell from the slight tension afterward that he hadn't planned on it. We're both startled by it. The silence after is different from the silence before. I pull myself back. Why does any of this matter? The pack is gone. He stops walking, turns to look at me directly. It matters, he says, because I need to know what was taken. I don't answer. I'm not sure I have one that isn't more revealing than I can afford. We turn back toward the palace. The path narrows between 2 hedgerows, and for 30 feet, our shoulders are close enough that I can feel the warmth of him. Not the bond, or not only the bond, but something more ordinary, and therefore more difficult. I don't move away. Neither does he. Neither of us says anything. By the time the path widens, I've reorganized myself into something manageable. He escorts me to my chambers in silence, formal and correct. I tell myself the walk was reconnaissance, information gathering. I learned things about how he listens, what he considers worth asking. I have almost convinced myself of this when we reach my door and he stops, his hand on the frame. I didn't ask to be polite, he says quietly, looking at the middle distance. I needed to know what was worth protecting. He leaves before I can answer. I stand in the doorway and listen to his footsteps fade, staying longer than I should. Then I go inside, sit on the edge of the bed, and make myself think clearly, which takes longer than usual tonight. And if he was indifferent, he wouldn't ask about my mother's honey cakes. He wouldn't laugh and look startled at himself, or say something true and then leave before you can use it against him. He's already questioning something. I just don't know what yet. Chapter 5, The Procedural Challenge. Heron makes his first move on day 7, and it's so elegant I almost don't see the knife. The Grievance Review Council meets in a long, wood-paneled room on the palace's east wing, 12 lords around an oval table, Kael at the head, Heron 3 seats to his left. I sit against the wall in the ward's designated chair, which is not at the table, which is not accidental. I am here to observe and respond if addressed. That distinction is built into the architecture of the room itself. I have been in 7 sessions now. I know where everyone sits. I know who defers to Heron and who defers to Kael and who watches both of them the way I watch things, cataloging, calculating. I know that the lord on Heron's right taps his ring against the table when he's about to abstain. I know the woman at the far end hasn't looked at me with hostility since session 3, which could mean warming or could mean she's gotten better at hiding it. Today's agenda is routine, 3 items that don't concern me. I am just beginning to think this session will pass without incident when Heron sets down his pen and says, with the measured reasonableness of a man who has spent decades sharpening that tone to a precise edge, I'd like to raise a point of order regarding the ward's grievance standing. The room goes attentive in the particular way of people who have been waiting for something without knowing it. The ancient rite, under which Ward Daya's challenge was invoked, stipulates that the challenger must be of active pack standing. He pauses. He doesn't look at me. He doesn't need to. The Ashen Pack no longer exists as a formal entity recognized by imperial law, which raises the question of whether Ward Daya has standing to invoke the ancient rite at all, and therefore whether this grievance review has legal foundation to proceed. The silence that follows is the specific kind that means everyone in the room is running the same calculation I am. It's brilliant. Every word technically accurate. The Ashen Pack was dissolved as a formal entity upon annexation. Imperial law does not recognize dissolved packs. The ancient rite requires pack standing. The argument holds. My counter-argument exists. Pack lineage is distinct from pack standing. Bloodline cannot be dissolved by administrative decree. But it's thin, and it requires the council to accept a reading of the charter that Heron has had 11 years to shape. I feel the ground shift and fix my eyes on the middle distance, letting my face settle into something that gives away nothing. I am 2 sentences from losing everything. Then Kael speaks. He doesn't raise his voice. He sets down his pen with the deliberateness of a man who has already decided what he'll say and is simply waiting for the correct moment. The Ashen Pack was absorbed, he says, not dissolved. The distinction is material. He looks at Heron with an expression that gives away nothing. Wolves whose packs are dissolved lose lineage rights entirely. Wolves whose packs are absorbed are folded into the empire and retain bloodline standing under imperial protection. That is the law as applied in every absorption this empire has conducted in 2 centuries. Ward Daya retains pack lineage through her father, Alpha Ren, whose rank was stripped but whose bloodline was not. Her standing is intact. I had prepared this argument myself, word for word, in case I needed to make it. Hearing it in his voice instead is something I don't have a category for yet. Heron's expression doesn't change, but his eyes sharpen, a fraction of a second, and then it's gone, smoothed back to careful neutrality. A reasonable interpretation, he says, which means he knows he's lost this move and is already calculating the next one. The council votes. The overrule holds. When the session ends and the lords file out, I stay in my chair and watch the room empty. Across the table, Kael gathers his documents, unhurried, methodical, stacking them with the same deliberateness he brings to everything. He doesn't look at me, but I watch his hands as he straightens the papers, and I see it. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor, controlled before it becomes visible, but not quite before I catch it. One unguarded second where the cost of holding that room, of shutting down a man as dangerous as Heron with nothing but precision and charter law, shows in him. He looks up, I look away, smoothly, as though I'd been studying the wall behind him all along. I gather my notes. I do not think about what I just saw. That night, alone with my notes spread across the desk, I sit with the question I can't set down. He didn't have to do that. He could have let the challenge run through committee, let it die slowly, kept his hands clean. Instead, he shut it down in 30 seconds. Clean, decisive, immediate, like he'd already prepared the counter-argument and was waiting for Heron to give him the opening. A man performing neutrality doesn't prepare in advance. I write why in the margin, stare at it a long moment. Then I write, find out.
Chapter 6. The Inner Circle. The woman from the Ashen Pack is either my salvation or my destruction, and I have 18 months of work that could collapse if I guess wrong. I have been wrong before. I know exactly what it costs. My private study is the one room in this palace where I don't perform anything. No court face, no measured silences, no careful calibration of what I allow to be seen. The door is locked. The wards are active. Thane set them himself. 3 people in this empire know this room as it actually exists, and 2 of them are sitting across from me now. Mira has her boots off. She does this every time. The moment the wards go up, boots off, feet tucked under her in the chair like we're 20 years younger, and this is a war camp. I have never commented on it. I never will. Thane is at the window. He doesn't like having his back to glass. Old habit from the field, never fully shed. I have the same one. She knows something, I say. I saw it in the circle. She came in with evidence she hasn't shown yet. Something physical, a document. She moved like someone who knows exactly what's in their pack and exactly how much it weighs. Mira watches me with the expression she reserves for situations where she's already formed an opinion and is waiting to see if I'll arrive at it myself. You're compromised. The mate bond. I know. Kael. I know, Mira. No heat. She's not wrong, and we both know it. The bond has been a low, constant fact since the moment Daya stepped into that circle. Managing it requires the same discipline as managing any other liability. Acknowledge it, account for it, don't let it make decisions for me. I'm working with it, not around it. Mira nods once, accepts this for now, reserves the right to revisit it. If she's working with Heron, Thane begins, she's not. Certain in the way I'm certain of very few things. Heron wanted her gone the moment she entered that circle. He had 3 inches of movement toward his council seal before he caught himself. He was going to raise a formal objection and stopped because he calculated it would draw more attention to the Ashen file. A man doesn't move to suppress someone he's working with. He moves to suppress someone he's afraid of. Thane turns from the window. The procedural challenge today was elegant. It was. It failed, which means he'll move laterally next. I look at 18 months of documents spread across my desk. Financial records, correspondence fragments, forged signatures identified by comparison, never confession. The shape of what Heron has done is visible in this material. The proof is not. Not yet. Not quite. Where are we on the secondary accounts? Thane produces a summary. 3 transactions that don't match the declared timeline. A name appearing in 2 different handwriting styles, close enough to be deliberate, different enough to be damning if you know what you're looking at. If. That word has been the shape of this investigation for 18 months. We need more time, Mira says. A fact, not a complaint. We have 23 days before her grievance expires. That's a significant number of conditions. Yes. Mira is quiet. Then, not unkindly. When did you last sleep? I don't answer. She looks at Thane. Thane, who has never in 20 years offered an unsolicited opinion about anything that wasn't a security threat, says nothing. But he slides my untouched tea across the desk with one finger. The gesture is so small and so deliberate that I almost miss what it means. I pick up the tea. Drink it. It's cold. Thane steps out briefly. The door closes. Mira waits until his footsteps fade. "You flagged the Ashen file 3 years ago," she says. "Yes." "And then you let Heron talk you out of it." "Yes." She doesn't say anything else. She's the only person alive who could say that to me without it being a play for something. No leverage, no positioning, just the truth, offered by someone who has earned the right. I let it land. I let myself sit in it for 3 seconds, and then I file it where I file everything I can't fix retroactively. Thane returns. We continue. "If she has what we need, I'll know soon enough." "And if she doesn't trust you?" Mira asks. I don't answer, because the answer is, then Alpha Ren stays in that cell, and I add his name to the ledger, and I am very tired of adding names to that ledger. Then Thane sets a document on the desk. I read it. New charges against Alpha Ren. Conspiracy to incite rebellion. Filed this afternoon through a channel that bypasses standard review. I go very still, the kind of still that is not calm, but is the thing you build over calm to keep it from becoming something else. Heron's warning shot. I close the file, look at Thane, then Mira. "We keep working," I say. Neither of them argues.
Chapter 7. The Argument. I find out by accident, on a Tuesday, in the court archives, between a stack of territorial boundary disputes and a water rights filing from 11 years ago. On the 43rd page of the Ashen Pack annexation file, in the margin of a territorial transfer authorization, I find 4 words in handwriting I don't recognize. Flagged for review, KM. I read it twice, then I look at the archivist. He's copying something into his ledger, not watching me. "This notation," I say, even voice, practiced. "What does it mean?" He looks up, goes pale in approximately 2 seconds. "That's a standard administrative, I'm not able to discuss." "KM," I say. "Who uses those initials in an official capacity?" He closes his ledger, stands. "I think our session is concluded for today." I gather my notes. I walk out with my face arranged into something that is not what I feel, and I feel that way all the way down the corridor and up 2 flights of stairs and past 4 guards and directly to the door of Kael Morrow's private chambers. The guards step aside without being asked. The mate bond functions as informal access credentials. It infuriates me every time. Kael is at his desk, reading. He looks up without surprise, which infuriates me further. "You knew." "I don't sit. Don't close the distance." 3 years ago, you flagged the Ashen annexation. You knew something was wrong and you did nothing. He sets down his book, stands slowly with the particular deliberateness of a man who has already decided the pace of this conversation. "Yes," he says. I expected denial, reframing, some version of the controlled neutrality I've watched in council sessions for 8 days. I did not expect yes, unadorned, no defense, no preemptive qualification. Just the truth, offered without ceremony. It disarms me completely. That makes me angrier. "Why?" My voice cracks. I hate that it does. "Why did you flag it?" The boundary transfer authorization had a signature variance, minor, the kind attributed to a rushed signing, a secretary's error, but I'd seen Heron's work long enough to know the difference between careless and careful. Even. Steady. His voice isn't doing what mine is. I flagged it for review. And then? Heron told me it was a clerical error. He had documentation. The timing was politically difficult. 3 weeks from the Eastern Accord negotiations and opening an inquiry into a completed annexation would have given 3 lords reason to pull their support, a pause with weight in it. I let it go. The 4 words sit in the room like stones. "I was wrong," he says. My father has been in a cell for 5 years. I have spent those 5 years learning every angle of pack law, every procedural clause, every obscure provision I could bend into a tool. I walked into that circle 8 days ago, knowing the odds, and did it anyway, because there was no other option. And this man had the power to end it 3 years ago. My father has been in a cell, I say, and my voice is quieter now, which is somehow worse. For 5 years. You let it go. He doesn't look away, doesn't qualify. doesn't reach for the 12 reasonable explanations that probably exist. I know, he says. 2 words. Just that. The silence between us is different from every other silence we've had in this palace. The bond pulls between us, taut and painful, and I am furious at it for existing, furious at him for absorbing my anger without deflecting it, furious at myself for the grief underneath the fury, which I have no room for right now. If you have evidence, Kael says very quietly, I need to know, not because of the bond, because I cannot let this stand. I don't answer. I walk out. I don't slam the door. My father taught me that a controlled exit says more than an angry one. In the corridor, I stop. My hand is still on the doorframe. The wood is cold. Somewhere behind this door, Kael hasn't moved. I can feel it, bond or instinct or something that has learned the specific quality of his stillness well enough to recognize it through walls. I stand there, not going back, not going forward. I am furious at him. The fury is real and earned and going nowhere. I also believe him. Both things are true simultaneously, and that doubling, that inability to resolve it into something simpler, is more dangerous to me than the fury alone. Fury I know how to carry. I have been carrying it for 5 years. This is something else. I finally walk, but before I make it to the first corner, a council clerk intercepts me in the corridor. He hands me a notice without meeting my eyes and disappears before I can ask questions. I read it in the stairwell. Alone. New charges against my father. Conspiracy to incite rebellion. I stand there long enough to memorize every word, then fold it and keep walking. Back in my chambers, I discover I'm crying. 3rd time in 5 years. I let it run its course because I am too tired to choke it down. Then I stop. Sit up straight. My father is still in that cell. He doesn't have time for me to fall apart over a man who said I know like it cost him something. Even if it did. Chapter 8. The Assembly Hall. He reopens the Ashen annexation inquiry in front of every lord in the empire, and it costs him everything. The full Lord Assembly meets on day 15 of my grievance period. 15 days left, and nothing has moved fast enough, and Heron has been 3 steps ahead of me since I walked into this palace. I know this. I sit in the wards gallery above the assembly floor and know it with the clarity of someone who has done the math too many times to pretend the numbers are different. The hall is full in a way the council sessions aren't. Every major lord, every seat occupied, the gallery lined with attendants, and the particular category of court hanger-on who appears wherever something consequential might happen. The acoustics are designed for projection. Every word on the floor arrives in the gallery with perfect, unsparing clarity. Heron speaks first. He is, I will acknowledge privately and never aloud, exceptional at this. The performance of reasonableness is a skill most people never fully master. He stands, unhurried, and presents his proposal with the tone of someone raising a mild administrative concern on behalf of the empire's general welfare. A formalized grievance framework, clearer evidentiary standards, a pre-screening process to ensure challenges under the ancient right meet minimum substantiation before consuming the council's time. Every word aimed at me, every person in this hall knows it, not one of them says so. The lords are nodding. I watch agreement move through the room like weather, slow, collective, inevitable. It's reasonable, they're thinking, sensible. It will pass. I can see it from here. 3 lords offer supporting statements. The framing is immaculate, protecting the system, not targeting any individual case. Of course it is. The vote is being called. Kael stands up. The room goes silent, that specific silence that belongs only to him, falling the moment he moves with intention. He doesn't call for attention. He simply stands, and the room reorganizes itself around the fact of him standing. Before the council votes, he says, I have a matter to introduce. Heron, across the floor, goes very still, not visibly, his face is composed. But I have spent 15 days learning to read what isn't on Heron's face, and what isn't there now is the faint satisfaction of a man watching his proposal sail toward passage. I am formally reopening the Ashen Pack annexation inquiry, Kael says. Effective immediately. The documentation contains irregularities warranting full imperial review. I am assigning an independent investigator outside the existing council structure, reporting directly to this office. The hall erupts. Not all at once. It builds, one voice finding another. I hear support, a few voices, careful and measured. I hear significantly more that aren't, precipitous, destabilizing. The mate bond, that last phrase in 4 different registers of insinuation. Heron rises smoothly. Your Majesty, with respect, this seems precipitous. A parallel imperial inquiry risks procedural conflicts that would undermine both processes. This is not a parallel process. It is a separate inquiry into imperial documentation. It is within my authority and not contingent on the ward's grievance. The timing is mine to determine. 4 words. Quiet, absolute, final. Heron holds Kael's gaze 1 beat too long enough to communicate that this is not over, then inclines his head and sits. The debate runs 20 minutes. The arguments against are louder and more numerous. 2 lords who've been neutral since my arrival come down against it, which means Heron reached them between sessions. Kael listens to all of it without interrupting, without softening his position by a single degree. The vote passes by 2. In a room this size, that's surviving by the skin of your teeth. Kael just burned political capital he'll spend a month recovering, in front of people who will remember. He did it anyway. The hall empties slowly. I come down from the gallery and move against the current of departing lords, not entirely certain what I'm doing until I'm doing it. By the time I reach the floor, it's nearly empty. Kael stands at the far end, gathering his documents with the methodical calm of a man who has done something costly and will not let anyone see him feel the cost of it. I cross the room. He looks up. I think about the archive notation, his unsteady hands after the council session, the corridor outside his chambers where I stood with my hand on the doorframe, believing him before I was ready. I think about a man who just spent capital he couldn't afford because it was right. I know the difference between a move and a choice. I have spent 5 years learning to tell them apart. I reach up and kiss him. Not soft, not tentative. The same deliberateness I brought to the challenge circle, a decision made clearly, in full knowledge of its consequences. He goes still for 1 heartbeat, just 1, then kisses me back with a careful certainty that feels nothing like the bond and everything like him. I pull back. The hall is empty. 15 days remain. None of that has changed. 15 days, I say. 15 days, he agrees. I pick up my notes, walk toward the door. I don't look back, but I'm aware, with the precision of someone who has learned to track him without appearing to, that he watches me all the way out. Chapter 9, The Deed. Heron escalates, and I run out of time to keep my secrets. The notice arrives before dawn, slid under my chamber door by a council clerk who is gone by the time I open it. I read it standing in the doorway in gray early light, still in yesterday's clothes because I didn't sleep. Alpha Ren, sentencing review scheduled, immediate transfer to restricted holding, effective in 72 hours. I read it twice. The first time my eyes move over the words without fully processing them, the way your mind refuses the shape of something it doesn't want to be true. Then I fold the notice in half, set it on the writing desk, and sit on the edge of the bed and think. 14 days left on my grievance period. New charges filed through channels Heron controls, time to land the morning after Kael reopened the inquiry. Not coincidence. A message. I can reach him whenever I want. Move carefully. The deed is at the Ashen Ruins. 2 days' travel. I have the legal knowledge to contextualize it, but not the imperial authority to authenticate it, not the investigative documentation to prove the pattern it's part of, not the platform to present it before Heron can dismantle it. Alone, the deed is a document. Without someone with the authority to stand behind it in that assembly hall and say, this is real and this is what it proves. It is a piece of paper his allies will spend 30 seconds destroying. My father doesn't have 14 days. I put the notice in my pocket. I walk through the early morning corridors, past guards who have stopped questioning where I'm going because the mate bond makes questioning it complicated, and I don't knock on Kael's chamber door because I stopped knocking 3 days ago. He's awake, already dressed, a cup at his elbow, 3 open files in front of him. He looks up and reads my face the way he has of reading it, registering more than I intend to show. I need to tell you something, I say. I should have told you before. I didn't because I wasn't certain I could trust you, and now I'm out of time to be uncertain. I set the notice on the desk between us. He reads it. Something in the set of his jaw tightens, controlled, and brief. There is a deed, I say. The original territorial deed for the Ashen Pack lands, signed by your father before the annexation was proposed. It proves the land transfer authorization Heron filed was forged, establishes prior claim, contradicts the annexation paperwork at every material point, carries your father's genuine signature rather than the variance on the authorization. I hold his gaze. I know where it is. I've known since before I came here. I couldn't produce it alone. Silence. Kael is still in the way. That means he's processing rather than performing stillness, less constructed, more internal. He waits until I'm completely finished. Where? He asks. The Ashen Ruins. My father built a cavity in the east wall of the ceremonial hall before the annexation was finalized. He knew something was wrong. He told me where it was the last time I saw him, before the trial. My voice stays level. I have practiced this. He said if anything happened, I'd know what to do with it. Kael looks at me for a long moment. I need to tell you something too. He opens the center drawer and produces a file, thick, worn at the edges, opened and closed many times over a long period. He sets it beside Heron's notice, and for a moment the two documents sit together like halves of something always meant to be read in conjunction. 18 months ago, I began an internal investigation into Heron's financial holdings and council activities. Unofficial, unlogged, known only to Thane and Mira. I had the signature variants, 3 other annexations with similar irregularities, a pattern of transactions that didn't align with his declared holdings. He opens the file. What I didn't have was a document proving forgery rather than suggesting it. You've been hunting him this whole time. Yes. You didn't tell me. Because I didn't know if I could trust you. He meets my eyes. I do now. Something shifts. Not dramatically. No change in light or temperature. Just 2 people who have been circling something finally stopping and facing the same direction. The deed is the piece I've been missing, he says. Together, the pattern becomes proof. But if Heron learns we have it before we're positioned to present it publicly, he'll move against us both. We have one opportunity, one assembly, one presentation, everything at once. He looks at me. If we miss the timing, we don't get another one, I say. I know. He nods. Then we'd better not miss. Chapter 10, The Plan. We have 13 days, 1 hidden document, and an enemy who has survived 3 kings. Time to move. Thane and Mira arrive within the hour, separately, through different corridors. By the time both are seated in Kael's study with the wards up and the door locked, I've had exactly long enough to understand that I am now part of something that has been running without me for 18 months. The adjustment required is not small. Mira looks at me when she enters the way she looks at most things. Directly, without performance, taking an assessment she doesn't bother to disguise. Then she opens her notebook and says nothing about the fact that I'm here, which I understand is its own form of acceptance from someone like her. Thane doesn't look at me at all, which I've learned means nothing. Thane doesn't look at anyone specifically. He looks at rooms, at exits, at the space between people. It is, I suspect, how he's survived this long in a profession with a poor actuarial record. Kael lays out the framework in 7 sentences. The shape of it: retrieve the deed from the Ashen Ruins, return to court, cross-reference the deed against 18 months of investigation documentation, present the complete case at the next full Lord Assembly. The deed proves the forgery. The investigation proves the pattern. Together, they dismantle Heron completely. Timeline, Thane says. 2 days to the ruins, 2 back, 9 days to verify, prepare, and present before the grievance expires. Mira doesn't look up from her notebook. Heron fast-tracked the procedural reform into subcommittee. It didn't pass in the assembly, but he can bring it back with modifications inside 10 days. If he gets a second vote before we move, he could raise the evidentiary threshold high enough to invalidate the deed even if we produce it. Then we leave in 3 days, Kael says, before he can tighten the constraints further. I should go alone, I say. Everyone looks at me. Kyle's expression doesn't change. I know the ruins. I know exactly where the deed is. Alone, I'm faster, less visible, and if something goes wrong, there's no risk to your investigation or your position. If Heron finds out you went there with me, the trip itself becomes the story. That's a reasonable argument, Kyle says. Thank you. You'd get the deed. You might not make it back with it. He doesn't raise his voice. Heron has people watching movement, watching for progress. You travel alone, he knows within hours. Under the protocol cover, the Alpha King visiting a potential mate's homeland, he has less to act on and less time to act on it. This isn't about my position. It's about getting the deed back here intact. I go through the argument twice in my head, looking for where his reasoning breaks. I don't find it. I concede. Not because he outranks me. We both know that's not what this is. Because he's right, and I have not spent 5 years building this case to lose it to pride in the final 2 weeks. Fine, I say. He nods once. No satisfaction. No performance of having won. Just acknowledgement. Already moving to the next thing. Mira will stay at court and run interference. Heron's 3 closest council allies each want something from the next budget session, and she has spent 18 months learning what those things are. She will keep him looking at the council chamber and not at the road south. She delivers this with the brisk efficiency of someone who has been running operations since before I was old enough to shift. Thane covers contingencies, 2 alternative routes if the primary road is watched, a contact in the nearest village, communication protocols. He delivers it in flat, informational tones, and I write down everything because I have learned that Thane does not repeat himself. The council breaks. Kyle and Mira step into the corridor. The door closes. Thane lingers. Without looking at me, he crosses to the table and sets a small folded paper in front of me, then turns back to the map as though he never moved. I unfold it. A hand-drawn route south, distances marked at each junction, and overlaid in different ink, 3 contingency exits not mentioned aloud. In the bottom corner, so small I almost miss it. East wall cavity, 3rd beam from the north corner, in case you need confirmation. He found it independently. Of course he did. 18 months of investigation, and Thane leaves nothing unverified that can be verified. He knew, researched it separately, quietly, without being asked. I look up. He's already gone. The door open an inch. I fold the map and put it in my pocket beside Heron's notice, and I sit for a moment with the particular feeling of having been helped by someone who will never acknowledge it, and finding that, somehow, more steadying than any acknowledgement would be. That evening, Kyle appears in my doorway while I'm packing. He doesn't come in. He looks at the room, the open pack, the sorted documents, and then at me. Checking something that has nothing to do with logistics. I let him see that I'm ready. He nods, turns to go. Kael. He stops. Thank you. I don't specify for what. He'll know. He looks at me a moment, nods again. The same nod, but warmer at its edges, the way his expressions sometimes shift when he thinks he isn't being directly observed. Then he goes. Chapter 11. The Ruins. I haven't been back to the Ashen Pack in 5 years, and bringing him here feels like showing him every scar I've spent half a decade hiding. We arrive in late afternoon, when the light comes in low and sideways through the trees and turns everything it touches the color of old copper. I've been watching for the boundary markers since we crossed the last ridge, the carved stones my father placed at every entrance to Pack territory, weathered now, some tilted by frost, and years of no one correcting them. We're inside the boundary, I say, when we pass the 3rd. Kael looks at the nearest marker, nods, doesn't ask questions. The trees thin, and then the ruins open up before us, and I stop walking without planning to. I knew it would be bad. I prepared for bad. What I didn't prepare for is the way the ruins have continued without me. The walls that were standing now half-standing, the courtyard overgrown with the organized indifference of nature filling available space. The ceremonial hall has collapsed along the eastern side. The roof is open to the sky. I stand at the edge of the courtyard and breathe. Kael stops beside me. He doesn't speak, doesn't fill the space with reassurance or commentary. He looks at what I'm looking at, then at me, then back at the ruins. He just stays, and I am grateful, in a way I couldn't have predicted, for the specific quality of his silence. I start walking. I know this ground. 5 years and all the overgrowth and the altered light, and I still know it. The long stone table of the main hall, cracked and running with moss. The corridor where I shifted for the first time, flagstones still visible beneath the weeds. I walked this corridor 1,000 times. I know the place where the third stone from the left had a chip in its corner that my father kept meaning to repair. I don't look for the chip. I keep walking. I stop at the center of the courtyard without meaning to, the way you stop at the sight of something that happened even when you've told yourself you won't. This is where he knelt. The dirt is just dirt now, packed and weathered and indifferent. 5 years of weather have taken everything else. I knew they would. I look at it anyway. I find the east wall. Most of the hall's eastern side has come down, the upper courses of stone collapsed beneath the rubble, lower walls intact. I count from the north corner. 1 beam, 2, 3. The cavity is behind the third beam, in the lower wall, behind a stone my father mortared loosely so it could be removed by hand. He told me this 11 days before his trial, in a visiting room with a guard present, in a conversation about pack history that sounded like a conversation about pack history, unless you knew what words he was actually using. I find the stone. It resists 5 years of grit and weather holding it, and I work it loose with both hands and reach into the dark cavity behind it. My hand finds oilcloth. I pull it out and hold it in both hands. The wrapping is tied with cord that has stiffened but not rotted. And on the outside, in my father's careful, precise handwriting that I would know anywhere, for Daya. I don't move for a long time. Kael makes his way across the rubble behind me and stops when he reaches me, close enough that I can feel the warmth of him in the cold of the collapsed hall. He doesn't reach for the deed. He puts his hand over mine on the document. Just that. Not taking anything, not directing anything. Present. Something gives way. I don't make a sound. That matters to me. The tears come without noise, the plain physical fact of 5 years of held weight in the ruins of my home, with proof of my father's innocence in my hands. Kael doesn't move, doesn't look away. He sees it and lets it be what it is. After a while, I get my breath back. I wipe my face. I look up at the open sky beginning to purple toward evening. He knew you'd come back for this, Kael says. He shouldn't have had to hide it. My voice is rough. I don't smooth it. He shouldn't have had to plan for being taken. No, Kael says. He shouldn't have. Not, I'm sorry. Not, we'll make it right. Just the plain acknowledgement that the thing was wrong, and no remedy changes the fact of it. Day 20. The provenance deadline I logged on my first morning in the ward chambers, the one I've been counting toward without knowing if I'd make it. The deed is its own proof of provenance, my father's hand, his seal, the date preceding everything Heron built on top of it. We made it by hours. I tuck the deed inside my coat. At the edge of the collapsed hall, Kael stops, looks at the broken roof line against the sky. When this is over, I'll rebuild it. If you want. I look at him, at the ruins, at the first stars showing through the open roof. I nod. Once? That's all either of us can manage, and it's enough. Chapter 12, The Return. We have the deed, and Heron knows something is coming. Mira is waiting in the east corridor when we ride through the gates, notebook already open, falling into step before we've fully dismounted. He moved the morning after you left, fast-tracked an amendment to the evidentiary standards. Any ancient right grievance that can't produce primary documentary evidence within 15 days of filing is subject to automatic dismissal review. She doesn't pause. Full council vote was yesterday afternoon. That's not standard procedure, I say. He framed it as administrative efficiency. Her mouth does something that isn't a smile. You filed on day 1. It puts your deadline in 8. 8 days. Authentication, cross-referencing, a complete assembly presentation, all of it before Heron identifies what we have. Thane materializes from a doorway to our left. He hands Kael a folder without being asked. Comparative signature samples, 11 verified documents, same period, same seal. If the deed matches the pattern, I can have authentication completed in 24 hours. I reach inside my coat and hand him the deed, still in its oilcloth. The unclenching required is conscious and deliberate, releasing the thing I've carried against my chest for 2 days. Thane takes it with both hands, carefully, as though he understands what he's holding. 24 hours, he says. Gone. We reconvene in Kael's study and build the presentation from the ground up, each argument stress-tested against what Heron's allies will say when it's public. Kael takes the financial documentation. Mira takes council procedure. I take the legal foundation, charter law, ancient right provisions, the specific clauses that make the deed binding rather than merely persuasive. We've been working 2 hours when Mira and Thane step out briefly. The door opens. I look up expecting Mira. Heron closes the door behind him. The wards are down. Kael stepped out 10 minutes ago and didn't reset them. I file that. Heron timed this precisely, which means he's been watching the corridor, which means someone told him when to watch. There are no attendants. The layered warmth he performs publicly is gone. Set aside deliberately, the way you set aside a tool when you've decided a different one is needed. I'm going to tell you something I want you to hear clearly, he says. Quiet. Conversational. Your father is a principled man. When I offered him the amended charter, formal annexation as mutual agreement, his rank preserved, his wolves protected, he refused. He chose his principles over his pack's security. A pause. You're about to make the same choice. He moves along the edge of the desk. Not toward me. Not toward me. Whatever you found in those ruins won't be enough. Evidence can be challenged. Authentication disputed. I have been doing this for 30 years, and I have never been unable to find the mechanism to make inconvenient things disappear. He holds my gaze. And when your evidence isn't enough, when the assembly declines, when the grievance expires, I will make sure Alpha Ren does not survive the disappointment. He says it without inflection, plain, like weather. Then he turns and walks out. The door closes with a quiet, definitive click. My hands are flat on the desk. I look at them. People threaten directly when they're afraid. My father taught me that. I pick up my pen. I go back to the charter records. He just told me exactly what I needed to know. We work through the night. At some point, Kael goes still mid-sentence. I look up. He's watching me. Not the document, not the page. The attending quality of it that I've stopped trying to categorize. What? I ask. Nothing, he says. He looks back at his documents. Neither of us pretends he was reading. Later, he returns with food I didn't ask for. Bread, cheese, something warm in a covered pot. Sets it beside my papers without comment, without making it into anything it isn't. I eat without thanking him. He doesn't need it. There is a language between people building something together under pressure, and this is part of it. Near the 3rd hour, we both reach for the same document. Our hands meet on the page. The bond flares, sharp, certain, moving through me from the point of contact. I don't step back. He doesn't either. Several beats longer than we should. Then I pick up the document, not retreating, recalibrating, and make a note in the margin. Kael picks up his pen. After this is done, I begin. After this is done, he says. We talk about what happens next. I nod. We keep working. At first light, Thane sets the authentication report on the desk. The deed signature matches across 11 verified documents. Same hand, same seal. Unambiguous. Mira reads it in 30 seconds. Heron has 3 lords ready to testify the grievance is politically motivated. Kael writes down the names she gives him. His jaw tightens at the 3rd. He caps his pen, looks at us. Let him try, he says. Chapter 13. The Assembly. This is it. Everything I've fought for, everything he's risked, comes down to the next hour. The hall is already full when I take the ward's gallery seat. Every lord, every council chair occupied, the gallery packed with attendants and observers who arrived early for the sight lines. Heron arrives 3rd from last. He takes his seat with the ease of a man entirely at home, exchanges words with the lord on his left, one of the 3 Mira named, and opens his documents with the calm of someone who has done what he thinks is necessary and is now waiting for the outcome he's prepared. He doesn't look for me. That's interesting. Kael enters last. The room organizes itself around him without being asked, the way it always does, and he takes his place at the head of the floor and looks at the assembly with an expression I know now: present, composed, giving away nothing that isn't chosen. Heron opens, and he is, as always, exceptional at it. The grievance is built on understandable grief. He says this with apparent sympathy, and three lords are already nodding. Grief is not evidence. Alpha Ren's charges were adjudicated through proper imperial process. To revisit that finding on a ward's challenge is to invite the destabilization of every imperial judgment ever rendered. Today, the Ashen Pack. Tomorrow, any pack that produces a grieving relative willing to stand in a challenge circle. He lets that sit. Then he calls his witnesses. The First Lord, the annexation documentation was procedurally sound. The second, Alpha Ren's trial was conducted with full legal representation. The third, the one whose name made Kael's jaw tighten, testifies that in 20 years on the council, he has never seen a grievance more clearly shaped by personal motivation than legal merit. The council murmurs in the register that precedes agreement. I watch Heron's hands, folded on the table, still, patient. Then Kael stands. The room goes silent, and Heron's hands, for one fraction of a second, tighten fractionally against each other before they relax. There it is. Before the council votes, I have evidence to present. Kael's voice carries to every corner. 2 bodies of evidence, a primary document, and a record of investigation conducted by this office over 18 months. I'll present them together because neither is fully intelligible without the other. Heron is on his feet immediately. Your Majesty, evidence pertaining to the grievance should be introduced through established review process, not an ad hoc floor presentation that bypasses the Council's evidentiary standards. The evidentiary standards you amended 4 days ago. Kael reaches into the file and produces the deed, which required primary documentary evidence within 15 days of filing, produced on day 18. He looks at Heron directly for the first time. The timing is within the amended standard, Lord Heron. Thank you for the clarification. Something moves through the room. Not sound. The room is very quiet, but the quality of an audience collectively revising what it's witnessing. Heron sits down. Thane delivers the authentication findings in his flat, informational tone, and the effect is more devastating than any drama could be: unadorned certainty. The deed's signature matches 11 verified documents in the late king's authenticated hand. The seal matches. The provenance is unambiguous. This deed, Kael says, was signed by my father 14 months before the annexation was proposed. It establishes prior territorial claim and directly contradicts the land transfer authorization upon which the annexation and Alpha Ren's conviction was legally based. He holds the deed beside a letter from his father's personal correspondence. Same signature, same seal, same hand. They do not match the authorization. He produces Thane's financial documentation. What the authorization's signature variant does match is 4 other annexation documents, each filed during the late king's declining health, each financially benefiting the same holdings. The room is silent. Heron stands. His voice is steady. Your Majesty, this is a coordinated attack on imperial authority. The Ashen Pack annexation was illegal. Kael doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The charges against Alpha Ren were fabricated. You forged my father's signature while he lay dying, and you have spent 3 years ensuring no one looked closely enough at the foundation to see what it was made of. Silence. Total. Absolute. I look at Heron's face, controlled for 30 years, right up until this moment, and watch something in it collapse by a fraction before it reassembles. His eyes cut to me across the floor. I think of the archive room. It won't be enough, he said. I don't look away. The vote falls like a verdict, unanimous. Heron, stripped of rank and title. Alpha Ren, conviction vacated, immediate release ordered. I sit in the gallery and breathe. 5 years. 5 years of pack law and cold rooms and 60-second allowances to fall apart. It's over. Below, Kael turns from the floor toward the gallery. Toward me. Lords are trying to speak with him from 3 directions. He turns away from all of them. Daya Ren, he says, and he makes sure the room hears it. Of the Ashen Pack. Not Ward Daya, not Challenger. My name, my pack. He is standing beside me, not in front of me. I nod once. That has always been enough between us. Chapter 14, The Claim. My father walks out of that facility the same afternoon, and I watch the moment he realizes I wasn't alone. The release order traveled ahead by courier. By the time we reached the holding facility, 2 hours south, low stone, smelling of damp, the paperwork is signed. We wait in the outer courtyard. Mira forward of me at the entrance, Thane at the gate, Kael to my right. Neither of us speaks. The door opens. My father walks through under his own power. That's the first thing, that he is walking, upright, with the deliberateness of a man told he can leave who won't let anyone see what it costs him to believe it. He is thinner, 5 years thinner, his hair more gray than I prepared for. He sees me, stops. His face does something I've never seen it do, unguarded, enormous, private. And then he pulls it back, because this is who he is, and I love him for both things at once. Then he sees Kael. He goes still differently. His eyes move between us. Kael's position at my right, the proximity. My father is an alpha. He reads the space between people the way other people read words. It's over, I say. Heron's been stripped. The conviction is vacated. You're free. How? He says. I look at Kael. The look holds more than I would have thought possible 3 weeks ago. I had help, I say. He crosses the courtyard and pulls me close, and I stop being composed for 30 seconds in the way that costs nothing because it has always been all right with him. He says my name against my hair. Just that. I know, I say. Me too. When he steps back, he turns to Kael. You're the king. Not accusation, not deference. One alpha acknowledging another on level ground. I am. And I owe you an apology I can't make adequately here, or possibly anywhere. I was wrong to let it go. Your daughter carried what I should have been carrying. I'm sorry. My father is quiet. Then he nods. Once, slow, deliberate. Not forgiveness. The beginning of the possibility of it. Both of them know the difference. We'll talk, my father says. When there's time? Yes, Kael says. We will. While transport is arranged, Kael and I walk to the edge of the facility grounds. The land is open, rolling south, and beyond the farthest ridge, invisible from here but present the way things are when you carry them, the ruins of the Ashen Pack. We look south. I meant what I said, Kael says. The hall, I'll rebuild it. Your father reclaims his rank formally. Pack autonomy restored in full, their own governance and law, same standing as any pack in the Empire. He'll want to be consulted on the stonework. I'll want to hear him. The light goes amber and long, the kind that makes distances look both farther and more reachable. And us? I ask. He turns to face me fully. The bond hums between us, and neither of us is managing it anymore. I find I don't want to. I don't know what happens next. I've never had a mate. He looks at me with the unguarded directness that used to exist only in locked rooms. But I want to find out, if you do. I think about cold stone under my feet in a challenge circle. 30 days, that became something I didn't plan for. An empty assembly hall where I crossed the room and made a decision with both hands. I didn't come here looking for you, I say. I know. But I'm glad I found you anyway. He kisses me, slow, deliberate, certain, the same quality he brings to everything he chooses. I kiss him back, with both hands, in full knowledge of what I'm choosing. The bond settles when we pull back. Not the forced thing of the challenge circle, not the managed thing of the last 3 weeks. Something chosen. Freely. Completely. Behind us, I hear Mira gives a laugh, brief but genuine, and the surprise of it stops me for half a second. I didn't know she did that. It becomes immediately one of my favorites. We should go back, I say. My father will want to discuss the stonework. The corner of his mouth moves. Almost certainly. We walk back together, the bond humming quietly between us, and I let it. Pack law says any wolf can challenge the alpha for leadership. I did. And I found something better than victory. I found someone worth standing beside. The end.
This story ends here. Thanks for listening. Tell us what you liked most in the comments. Your thoughts matter to us. Support our channel by liking this video and subscribing for new stories.